Her name is Damian Erveldote. With sapphire eyes and jet black hair under that small body, she was nothing but a pitiful child. Damian was the only princess of the Erveldote Empire, concentrated in the north of the mainland. However, something that was difficult to believe happened to her. She died before reaching adulthood, and regressed as a 5-year-old child. How did this happen? Even she didn't know. But one thing for sure was that this really happened, and her sensations upon death was real. She died. A few hours earlier, Damian was still cuffed in her arms and feet. The outraged crowd doubled down on Damian, as if they were pummeling her whole body mercilessly. They cursed and threw things at her while she was walking. Damian was also framed to be a witch who used black magic, and brought misfortune wherever she went. Those in the crowd also whispered amongst themselves, in a purposely loud voice for her to hear. Damian thought it was unfair. She only tried her best to live. As she arrived at the plaza, the judge announced her punishment. Execution, to think that she would die before becoming an adult tomorrow. Today, of all days, was a day before Damian's coming of age and birthday. Sadly, even with her royal family together, she won't be able to celebrate it. At the sound of the Empress' trembling voice, Damian realized she was the only family who cared for her. The Empress was different from the father and brother, who gave only cold gazes to the princess they deemed useless and unworthy. The executioner continued going down the list of Damian's sins. They were all unwarranted, all ridiculous. Afterwards, the magic tower's leech brought a small object, probably a detonator, and it began to shine. In an instant, Damian's eyes rolled up and turned white. It was a beautiful, magical brilliance that instantly killed a person. However, her eyes closed soon as she took her last breath. She would never know what kind of expression his father had, as he called her name for the last time. However, miraculously, she became young again. At first, Damian thought it was a dream. She looked around absently, and realized that she was in a familiar room. It was a room at the princess's palace, the place she resided in before she was imprisoned. Something was off. The place seemed too real. Having been locked up in a prison for ages, it's been a long time since Damian felt the chilly sunlight. A familiar voice called out to Damian, interrupting her thoughts. It was Sarah. However, the most astonishing was something else other than regression. At that exact moment, something floating by Damian's periphery caught her eye. It was a translucent light blue rectangle, sort of like a small window that moved along with her gaze. Inside were words that showed Sarah's name, Favorability, and mood. Sarah was smiling sweetly, but the translucent window in front of her was saying something else. Sarah handed a soup to Damian, but Damian didn't seem to like it. Suddenly, Sarah reminded Damian to not be a picky eater because the emperor will get angry. Today, the soup was sour and tasteless, but Sarah didn't even change the soup. Damian thought that Sarah was being good to her before regressing. But upon seeing the status window, Sarah seemed to be two-faced in reality. Damian forgot that she was treated like this when she was a kid, as she was too young. She didn't know if the status window really reveals the person's true feelings, so she decided to test it. Right after, Damian began to throw a tantrum and shouted that she didn't like the soup. As a result, the tasteless soup spilled on the table. Even though it was a lousy meal, a princess must still always embody elegance. However, Damian's body was rejecting it and moved on its own instead. A status window popped out, indicating Damian's synchronization of her body and soul. Damian was flabbergasted. She couldn't control her own body all the time. That means she would continue acting like a 5-year-old, regardless of her mental age. If her words were different from what she was thinking, she might get hated again. Before Sherbian died, she was hated by everyone. She didn't want to be treated like that again. Thankfully, she now has a weapon that she can use to know someone's true colors. Although Sherbian still needs to confirm this ability, she decided to make use of it for now. Sherbian ate very little back then, and left a lot of food on her plate, so she was still hungry. She dressed up in new clothes and asked Sarah if they will be going out today. Sarah reminded that the Emperor, Sherbian's father, will visit today. Of course, he is not here to visit Sherbian but to check the management of the estate. Sherbian's father, the stern ruler of the empire, was the one who ordered her execution. As Sherbian lowered her head, the Emperor rose to the forefront of her mind. Every time she thought of him, Sherbian's expression would harden as she was reminded of the death penalty. Sherbian trembled and winced involuntarily. She was frightened just by the thought of her father. She was more nervous because her small, undeveloped body sometimes refused to move at her will. While Sherbian was shaking in fright, a figure was closing in. The young Servian's body quivered tremendously when the Emperor arrived. A tall man with wavy, silver hair came into the room. He had on a look of indifference. It was the same cold expression that Sherbian remembered, but the Emperor now looked younger. Sherbian needed to convey her greetings, but no words seemed to come out her mouth. But the unexpected sight before her kept her nailed to her seat. There was a status window floating near the Emperor's chest. However, this was totally opposite from what Sherbian expected. The Emperor, who was always cold and heartless, but right now, the status window says otherwise. Sherbian was totally confused at this point. She didn't know if it was pranking her at the moment, but the Emperor's thoughts kept flooding. The status window displayed other things, but the most important thing was that the Emperor actually wanted to see Sherbian, and even considered her as a precious daughter, which made her baffled. Moreover, the Emperor's favorability towards her was actually over 90 million. Sherbian's nervousness disappeared and her body eased up. Damian Erveldote asked Sherbian, who was staring blankly at her father's status window. Also, he seemed to have misunderstood why Sherbian kept staring at him. The Emperor walked closer to where Sherbian was, and looked down at his daughter. A heavy silence descended upon the air around them. A strange feeling enveloped Sherbian. Was her father like this the entire time in her previous life? No, he wouldn't have let her die if that was the case. Dreadfully confused, Sherbian reflexively clenched her hands as she remembered the awful past again. As soon as the Emperor saw her small, tiny hands turning white, he thought that he should go and come back next time, in order not to scare his daughter further. If she remembered right, was it at this time of the year that she was hiding from her father? Sherbian soon figured out the situation. Sherbian's father seemed to visit every week to check up on her. The Emperor wanted Sherbian to see him off, but he turned away without saying anything. Up until that moment, the floating status window that showed his innermost feelings was still there. Still, her body wouldn't move at all because of the synchronization. It was exactly the behavior of a little girl who was scared. Maybe she misunderstood all along, but Sherbian was hopeful. Chancellor Hex, who came here with the Emperor, suddenly talked to him in hushed excitement. Sherbian got impatient when she saw her father going farther away and leaving. All of a sudden, a shocking scene occurred which made everyone gasp. Sherbian's small, dainty hands entered their sight, holding the Emperor's clothes with all her might. She couldn't believe what she'd just done, grabbing the Emperor's clothes without permission. Even so, Sherbian managed to pluck up the courage to do so after looking at the status window. The status window showed that Emperor Adrian was such an overdramatic and loving parent. Sherbian didn't know why the Emperor wouldn't just push her away, if he didn't like it. Maybe this status window was just a fever dream, but if it was real, then? If it is, then she wants to confirm. Why was the emperor like that in the past? She needed to talk to him very clearly. And very coherently from now on. Sherbian needed to know why the emperor abandoned her in the previous life. Maybe the future can be changed, but she has to know the real cause. Why she was framed and executed. Adrian Erveldote still wore an expressionless face. As he asked her daughter why did she stop him. Sherbian took a deep breath. She needed to speak like a well-educated princess, formal, calm. But then, something unexpected came out of her lips.
Bread.
Sherbian stuttered as she said something unexpected. Sherbian was overcome by embarrassment. What she was trying to say was to be with her father. She was overcome by embarrassment. What she was trying to say was, "Your Majesty, please allow me a moment of your time. I want to have tea with you." Sherbian decided to compose herself, and curtsied in a formal manner. She then invited the emperor to have a tea with her. No matter how unsynchronized her body was with her mind. Where on earth did bread come from? Sherbian got worried that this synchronization might get her in trouble. However, at that moment, the emperor's eyes became harsh at her sudden exclamation. Contrary to Sherbian's concern, the emperor's heated gaze settled on Sarah instead. It was Sarah who was practically starving Sherbian, since she served bad food. The emperor's wrath was solely directed at Sarah, as he asked why Sherbian needed bread at this hour. Sarah's body trembled and her status window kept flickering, revealing her unease. Sherbian thought that her father would also be angry at her for her impulsiveness. Just then, Chancellor Hex looked at Sherbian, as if to prevent the tense situation going worse. Chancellor Hex told the emperor that Sherbian only wanted to have dinner with him. Sherbian felt her body flinch at the mention of dinner. She remembered that she really hated dinner when she was young. For someone who said he'd be inconvenienced, his status window sure expressed otherwise. Adrian Erveldote's status window showed an increasing favorability. Upon hearing Sherbian's words, the emperor was clearly caught off guard since it's the first time. His daughter approached him first. Sherbian watched her father leave her palace, with a baffled expression on her face. The emperor told Sherbian that he will inform her later and left. If not for the status window, Sherbian would have thought that her father is difficult to approach. Afterwards, Sherbian was preparing herself to have dinner with her father later. Maid Sarah combed Sherbian with an enraged fervor. Because of her rough manhandling, Sherbian's neck was bent back, and it hurt so much. Sarah also scolded Sherbian because she was angry when the emperor asked her earlier. Suddenly, Sherbian noticed that her ribbons doesn't suit her. Not just that. All of the clothes in her closet were mismatched and the colors were all wrong. Right then, another maid came in front of Sherbian with an expressionless face to help her dress up. It was Ellie, in Sherbian's past life. Ellie was always expressionless and strict. While Sherbian was shaking in fright at Maid Ellie, the status window popped up. Ellie showed a positive favorability on Sherbian, and chose only a short description of her mood. Sherbian looked at Ellie and the status window strangely. Thanks to the status window, Sherbian managed to snap out of her fear, but she was now confused. Ellie has a higher favorability than Sarah about Sherbian. It was an eerie but extremely useful advantage, to have the ability to know what the other person was thinking, regardless whether the status window is true or not. Sherbian was relieved. Ellie then said that she was done preparing and dressing Sherbian up. Now, Sherbian seemed to have noticed that Ellie handles her softer than Sarah. However, Ellie was still strict and expressionless. She instructed Sherbian in a firm manner. She told Sherbian to behave well and avoid making mistakes at the dinner. Still, Sherbian was not scared this time but was rather happy, because she could see what's inside. She knew what's really going on. Sarah, even as she was talking in a sweet voice, was being awfully rude. On the other hand, even if Ellie's voice was a little harsh, she couldn't help but express her concern like this. Sherbian vowed to try her best again. If this status window could be utilized well, couldn't she prevent her enemies from hating her? Maybe this time she could avoid an execution in the future. Was it such a huge deal for Sherbian to have dinner with her father? Maybe not, but this will be the first step on finding her different ending. The servants announced that Sherbian has arrived. The emperor spoke to let Sherbian in. Sherbian trudged forward, the unnecessarily luxurious, high-quality dress made it difficult for her to walk. Anyway, she continued on her way because an order was an order, so she steeled herself. She has to do well in this dinner party this time. Of course, Sherbian had never invited her father first because of his frighteningly frosty eyes. Then, at some point, he had stopped eating with her, but now it will be different. While Sherbian was absorbed in her thoughts, Ellie informed her that the crown prince will be joining. Recalling the memory of her indifferent older brother, Sherbian got more nervous. Damian Erveldote, the crown prince of the empire and Sherbian's stepbrother. Sherbian and the crown prince had different mothers. Because Sherbian was a concubine's child, there were so many bad rumors about her. Sherbian asked Ellie if the empress will also come. The empress wasn't her real mother, but she had always been kind and warm. However, Ellie replied that the empress won't be coming, making Sherbian dejected. If the empress was there, then the atmosphere at the table would have been a little softer. The emperor and the crown prince were waiting when Sherbian arrived. Emperor Adrian told Sherbian to take a seat. For some reason, Sherbian was led to a place that wasn't small in the slightest, making her uneasy. Sherbian was very nervous. She knew that she might not leave today's dinner unscathed. The atmosphere was stifling. Sherbian took a furtive glance to the side, where she could feel a burning gaze. The dinner was still silent, however. Sherbian noticed her father's status window. The emperor's favorability kept rising. It seemed he was glad by just spending time with Sherbian. Still, Sherbian didn't know this reason. Moreover, her brother's status wasn't normal either. Damian's favorability was almost as high as the emperor, and seemed to like Sherbian instead. Contrary to the status window, Damian's face was still indifferent and he didn't even talk to Sherbian. Sherbian, whose attention was now on her brother's status window, was speechless. Right then, the emperor asked Sherbian if she didn't like the food since she didn't even touch it. Little did he know, Sherbian was just distracted with the status window, but she loves the food. However, Sherbian remembered that she has to eat only a little since she is a princess. But the steak was too tempting that Sherbian started salivating. Sherbian's face changed because of the trauma she recalled in the past. Befitting to a dignified princess, the empress always told Sherbian to watch her weight. Moreover, Sherbian was framed as the prime suspect of the food wastage scandal. This made her even more scared, because she might be wrong again with her actions. But then, a status window popped up, interrupting Sherbian's thoughts. The emperor seemed to be worried about her, because of her pale expression and not eating anything. Does her father care about her, really? That's what Sherbian had in mind. Strangely, it felt like something got lodged in her throat. After seeing the unexpected text on the status window, Sherbian blurted out something equally unpredictable. She ate the food and told her father that the food is delicious, to not let him worry. Then what's more surprising was the response. Unlike the empress' strictness on Sherbian, her father just wants her to indulge with the food. And because she didn't know how to use magic, she was told that she should take good care of her appearance. After getting permission, Sherbian prepared to dig in at the bewitching steak on the table. But she really should maintain her dignity. as a member of the imperial family. Out of nowhere, the emperor lifted his hand and casted a spell. At that moment, the meat that Sherbian was eyeing abruptly disappeared. She shouted without realizing what she just did. The steak was actually floating. As Sherbian covered her mouth in embarrassment, Emperor Adrian actually cut the steak into pieces in the air using magic. Far from berating Sherbian for her lack of manners, when she shouted, her father finds it cute. Sherbian sighed in relief since her father wasn't angry at her. The silence that wasn't appropriate for a family dinner came back again. But Sherbian was actually glad that she can actually read their thoughts. Maybe the status window is a blessing after all. The more meat she ate, the more relaxed Sherbian became. However, she can feel the gazes again. It was her brother who was intently staring at Sherbian. Choo choo choo. Despite her thoughts, Sherbian's young body remained faithful to its instincts. Damian finds her cheeks chubby and adorable, while she was still chewing in her mouth. In the past life, her brother ignored her and didn't care for her at all. Maybe if not for the status window, Sherbian won't know how her brother feels at all. Sherbian sighed in frustration, wondering what caused their change. But at that moment, the crown prince changed his stare towards the pepper. Damian wanted to have the pepper, but it was across the table near Sherbian. Shifting her line of sight, Sherbian found the pepper shaker near her and handed it to the crown prince. She was now eating as much delicious food as she could. But she remembered the taste of Sarah's bad soup, loaded with pepper. Sherbian, who was agonizing over the spice for a second, gave the pepper shaker away. She felt proud for making a plausible excuse for herself. However, Damian saw it as that his sister actually talked to him and he was happy for that. Sherbian felt awkward by those excessive reactions. Dinner have ended and Sherbian happily rubbed her stomach, because she was too full. But then came Sarah's menacing voice scolding Sherbian for eating too much. Sarah sighed deeply and left a bruise on Sherbian as she was being dressed for bed. Sherbian withstood Sarah's rough touch as she pulled the nightgown down while scolding her. But Sherbian made sure that she was allowed to eat it. Her father and brother's favorability kept rising whenever she took a bite. Still, Sarah reprimanded her and even blamed it to the Empress. Was it a test all along? Sherbian thought. Sherbian felt suffocated. She shouldn't have eaten it. In her past life, the Empress was kind but also strict towards her. The Empress disciplined Sherbian because Sherbian is a royalty. The status window might be saying the truth, but she really shouldn't have eaten 2 entire pieces of steak. Afterwards, Sarah told Sherbian to not eat any meals tomorrow as punishment. Sherbian can only agree, and as Sarah was leaving, Sherbian called out to her. She begged Sarah to stay with her, because she was sick after eating too much. However, it seemed that Sarah was indifferent and wasn't so concerned about it. Sherbian was crying inside. She wanted someone to accompany her tonight. As expected, Sarah's status window popped up displaying her displeasure. Back then, there was a time when Sherbian had a very high fever, so she asked Sarah to stay with her. Whenever Sherbian was sick, she was always left alone in her room. Sarah said it was for her own good so she could rest well, but Sherbian didn't want that. In the end, Sherbian could only nod despite her frustration. Just as she predicted, Sarah carelessly left her alone to sleep and quickly left the room. Sherbian was very happy a few moments ago, but now she felt empty. The only good thing is that Sarah's nagging, that would have continued for a long time, was cut short. After coming back from dinner, Ellie had to leave right away without any break and go to another palace. Why did she return to the past? This was her second life now and she didn't want to be a bad child. Sherbian slowly fell asleep in tears, as she fears for the days to come. Will she really be able to change her cruel ending?
That's all, folks. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment down below, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be posting more videos about good reads you may like, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you soon.